legacy lesson comes from Maurice R. Smith. Mr. Smith is the retired CEO of local government Federal Credit Union and Civic Federal Credit Union in North Carolina, the 2019 Peak Career Lifetime Achievement Award recipient, and a 2020 Herb Wegner Memorial Award recipient. He is an avid leader who has made extraordinary contributions to the credit union movement, including introducing the 8th cooperative principle. He began his career in financial services as a loan officer for State Employees Credit Union and served in several capacities, including vice president, city executive, and vice president of marketing and training. He holds a Bachelor of Science in Business Administration and a Juris Doctorate. Welcome once again, Maurice R. Smith.
Well, good morning again. I think according to the script, this is the last time I'm going to have something to say to you today. So this is a legacy lessons, and I'd like to have your permission, your consent, to spend the next few minutes and speak from my heart. All right, thank you. I don't have a script, I don't have an agenda, but I want to talk about legacy and what it means to me. So each and every one of you here, you have a legacy. You heard definitions earlier about what is legacy. We each have one. I'm just given the opportunity, and I'm grateful for this opportunity to share legacy from my perspective and what it's meant for me. If you have a sidebar conversation with me for any period of time, sooner or later my father's name or lessons that he's taught me is going to come up in the conversation. I can't help it. And if I tell you a story today that you've heard before, I'm sorry that you have to suffer through it again, but it's who I am. My dad told me a long time ago, he said, Maurice, I am going to program you. I am going to instill in you the man that I think you should be, and the contributions you should make to the community, and the father, the husband that you may be someday. He's telling me this when I'm a young child. I don't know what that means. So let me tell you a little bit about my upbringing, and then tell you about how I landed where I am today. So I grew up in a small community named Southport in North Carolina. It's a seaside community, but I grew up about 2 miles outside the city limit on a small family farm. We raised vegetables for a local retail market. We also trucked in produce from several other states, and we provided vegetables and produce for some of the local grocery stores. We had a wholesale and a retail operation. I have 3 younger sisters. I am the oldest of 4, have no brothers, and so I spent much of my time with my dad out in the fields doing work and that sort of thing. And so my dad was a longshoreman, he was an electrician, he was a real estate broker, a county commissioner, an Air Force veteran. He's done a lot of things, but he never went to college, but he was one of the most learned people I know on how to take the practicalities of life and apply it to what you want to accomplish. And my dad had this knack of always finding the simple little things in life to make a lesson out of it, because it was all about programming me into the kind of man he think that I should be. So on this particular day, let me back up for a moment. You've heard me say that I've been in the credit union business for 43 years, and so therefore there's my career. But the fact of the matter is my career expands 10 years beyond that, so 53 years in financial services. Let me explain how that works. On this particular day, my dad and I were out in the fields doing what we normally do. There's always something to do on a farm. And so this day we were planting potatoes in the field. And the tractor goes along, and if you've grown up on a farm, the tractor goes in and it splits the rows, it creates a crevice, it drops in the potato seedlings in, then there's another device comes along and it closes it. But inevitably, you know, machines are, they're fallible. And we would go in later, walking the evening, just sort of finding out where there may be some gaps in the rows, and we would manually drop potatoes in. So I'm 12 years old, and this is what our task was for the day. And so this particular day, my dad stops in the middle of the field. He has a hoe in hand, I have a basket, I have the potato seedlings. He leans on the hoe, he turns to me, and he said, Maurice, What are you going to do with the rest of your life? I'm 12 years old. I'm trying to figure out how girls work. So I did what a lot of 12-year-olds would do. I shrugged my shoulders and said, I don't know, which was a completely unsatisfying answer from my father. He said, then you need to choose your career for the rest of your life right now. And if you don't choose a career, I will choose one for you. So I paused for a moment. I said, may I have 24 hours to think about it? My dad said, yes, but tomorrow this time, I expect to have your answer. My dad would go on to explain to me and say, Maurice, I really don't care what you choose to do in life, so long as it's legal and you can make enough money to take care of a family someday. It's okay if you choose something by tomorrow and you change your mind later. But you substitute one goal with another goal. You don't substitute a goal with nothingness. But you have to start off with something. So tomorrow this time, I expect to have your answer. What is going to be your life's occupation? So we go on, we finish, planting the potatoes in the field. The following day, we take some receipts to the local community bank. It was called Walker-Mar Bank. Walker-Mar Bank is a bank that would eventually become UCB, United Carolina Bank, would eventually merge into BB&T, which would eventually become Truist Bank. But it was Walker-Mar Bank at the time. And we're standing in the line waiting for a teller to become available to us. And I look over to the side and I see there's an office that has glass windows, internally. I can see inside the office. There was a gentleman sitting at a desk. And it looked like there was lots of important papers on his desk. And I could see on the wall, he had lots of certificates on the wall, plaques and such. And he was sitting there wearing a suit and a necktie and a starch white shirt. I said, Dad, who is that man? My dad said, with this amount of emphasis, that is the bank president. Dad, that's what I want to be. I want to be a bank president. This is 1969. I had not, in my own eyes, seen an African American sitting in a position like that in my community. They existed. I read the Ebony magazines and the Jet magazines. I've seen they existed, but I've never seen one with my own eyes. And my dad turns to me and he says, you want to be the bank president? Yes, yes I do. The next 3 sentences out of my dad's mouth would change my life. He said, Maurice, but then you need to go to college, number 1. Number 2, you need to major in business. And number 3, I will help you. So from that point forward, the conversations I had with my dad on the farm all changed. We didn't talk about sports. We dare not talk about girls. We didn't talk about automobiles. We didn't talk about typical things that a 12-year-old want to talk about. He drilled me on Keynesian economics, the rule of 72, compounding interest, how wealth is created in the community, the reason why there's a disparity from one community to the next for healthcare, for employment, for house appreciation, for the creation of wealth. It often comes about the management of money and understanding that. He was talking about financial literacy before it was fashionable to talk about financial literacy. These are the things he drilled me on. Because he said, if you're going to be a bank president someday, you have to understand these things. I've been often asked, how does your dad know about these things? He didn't go to college. I said, I don't know how he understood these things, but these are things he was preparing before. And everything we'd see, even going to the market, working in the fields, working on tractor equipment, whatever it is, there was a business lesson in it, where he would introduce me to bankers and people, and he'd say, these are the folks you need to know. He said, you need to learn how to play golf because all bankers play golf on Friday afternoon. I never learned that lesson. But everything else, it was just demanding about what I needed to know, how to be prepared. So as it would turn out, I never actually got an opportunity to work in a bank. I worked for a credit union. I landed much better than that. And thank you. And so starting to work for the credit union and making my way into what I have to do, every big decision that I have to make, maybe that's a little bit hyperbole. Most of the big decisions I had to make, I would call my dad. He said, Dad, I have this decision to make about this or this, and he would listen to me. He never worked in a financial institution, but I wanted to hear his perspective about how should I approach this. And he would draw it back to some kind of lesson on the farm and say, this is, Maurice, how we did it on the farm. You should apply it here. Every big decision, I wanted to have a conversation with my dad. I wish he was here to talk to today. So later on in life, I would decide that I wanted to augment my credit union career by going to law school. So at the age 44, I decided, well, I'm just going to go to law school and pick up another degree. And I told my dad, I said, Dad, you know, this is a bit of a challenge. I've been out of school for a couple of decades, so let's keep this our secret. and so that way, if I wash out, then it'll just be you and I embarrassed about it. He said, deal. He told everybody at the barbershop, everybody at church, everybody at the bank, everybody at the grocery store. Everybody knew it within 24 hours. I remember my first day of law school. I go in, and there's a room, sort of a various level kind of auditorium. You may have seen it before in schools. There's 150 students in there. This is my first day. I risked a lot up on the cases I thought were going to come up for conversation. And we had this professor who seemed like the grumpiest person on earth, but there was a method to his madness. He went on to explain later the reason why he treated us the way he did, because if you're going to fold under pressure, now's the time to find out, not when you're standing before a judge and your client's there next to you. And so he treated us very harshly. He had this list, and he would look down, and he would call on students. It's a Socratic method. You stand up, and he screams and yells at you, and you have to be able to think on your feet and be able to answer the question. First person he calls on his list, Mr. Smith. Oh, crap, this can't be good. First day in law school, first hour, didn't know what to expect. I stand up, and he asked me something about the case that I perfectly knew, but I froze. I didn't know the answer. Sit down, Mr. Smith. Let me call on somebody who belongs here. So the next day, I go to my office at the credit union, and my dad calls me, and he says, so Maurice, how was your first day of law school? I said, Dad, I think it was a big mistake. I don't think I belong there. There are students there who are going to be fifth-generation lawyers in their family. There's some who went to Ivy League schools. There's some who are world-traveled. There's students there who are way ahead of me. I'm not sure I'm going to be able to make this work. My dad said, then I guess you're going to have to use your secret weapon. What secret weapon? What are you not telling me? He said, Maurice, you need to recognize that in most rooms you go into, you're not going to be the smartest person in the room. There's going to be somebody who went to a higher status school. There's going to be somebody who was born with a silver spoon in their mouth. There's going to be someone who's world-traveled, who's going to have a higher IQ, going to have better grades than you. But I raised you on a farm. You know if you wake up at 6 in the morning, you've wasted half the day. You know what it's like to work in a field all day, to be sunburned, bitten by mosquitoes. You know what it's like to get a garden hose and rinse the dust and the dirt out between your teeth and your nostrils. You know what it's like to be picking cucumbers. Snake reaches up, you kill the snake, push it aside, keep on working. You know what it's like to work hard. Don't you dare let any of those students there outwork you. So So if it took 10 times to read a case and understand it, I'd read it 11 times. So that's been my mantra for most of my career. I will outwork you. I'll work you under the table any day. You can't get to the office before I do. You can't stay as long as I can. I have given up lunch hours. I have spent the night in the office to meet a project. You cannot outwork me. That was my secret weapon. Everybody here has a secret weapon, something that's part of your legacy, a teaching of a grandparent or a parent or aunt or uncle or a neighbor, somebody to help get you exactly where you are here today, and that is your legacy. I'm often asked, did my dad ever get to see me become a CEO? We lost him to pancreatic cancer in 2007. Still, that word runs through me. And so we had moved into this brand new office building downtown Raleigh, had this nice corner office. My dad had already had the diagnosis at this time, and this is one of these days he wasn't feeling particularly well, but he said, I want to come see your new office before I'm unable to see it. And so my mom drove him up. My executive assistant met them at the door. I was finishing up a phone call in my office, and Gloria, she escorted my mom and my dad into my office, and my dad sat down in my office in the sofa there, and he looked around, and I'm watching him sort of take this in, and he looked, and there's certificates and degrees and things on the wall, and he just watched it for a while. Then he turns and he looks at my desk, and there's papers all over the desk, and he nods and looks at it for a while. And he looks at me, and I'm wearing a starch white shirt. And he just smiled. So that is my legacy. It's nothing fancy, just a farm boy that was blessed and highly favored to have a father who believed in me, who poured in me, and I became his dividend. So I love telling that story for this reason, particularly to 12-year-olds. Or if you have a 12-year-old in your family, go home to them and ask them, what are you going to do the rest of your life? And they'll shrug their shoulders and say, I don't know, like I did perhaps. But force them to make a choice and help them with that choice. And when they change their mind to do something else, help them with that choice. They will thank you for it. That's how you pay the dividend forward for each and every one of us. Thank you for listening to my legacy.